fun listening to that Elon room. That was one of my Clubhouse highlights. I just have to tell you, you guys killed it.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Living through that was quite the interesting experience, especially when, without telling any of us, he decided to invite Lord of Robin Hood up. That was definitely a memorable life moment right there.
I will never forget that. I will
really
never
wild.
forget that.
Hey everyone, just for folks just joining in, we're just gonna we have a super fun show today. We're just gonna give it a few minutes and just for everyone to get in there, and then we will get going for what is a much anticipated episode.
Yeah.
Sriram and Aarthi, we should publish the WhatsApp back channel group from the Elon episode as an NFT.
Why not? Why not?
And bid it out and see what we can get.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you're kidding, but it's kind of interesting.
Well, and then finally, your co-host would finally get paid.
I don't know how much I can share from the WhatsApp group that we had, but I will say that at one point in time, Marc tells me, don't say anything.
Nobody say anything.
Nobody say anything.
Which is extraordinarily difficult for Sriram.
I know.
and me.
Yeah, I remember that moment. Like everyone stopped talking. Nobody say anything. And we were like, okay.
All right. Chris, can you hear us? You're here? I think Chris here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. All right, I think we should get going. Should we get going?
Yeah, let's get going.
Great.
All right, Steven, hit the music. What?
Sorry. Audio problems.
This is such a professional operation. It's so impressive.
Live from San Francisco and here on Clubhouse, it's The Good Time Show, bringing you today in technology. And now your hosts, Aarthi and Sriram.
Woohoo! Welcome, Justin. I know you're like the music guy and you're probably cringing listening to us, but trust me, this is like a massive upgrade from what we usually hear from Sriram speakers. So
listen, I'll make you an intro song if you want. I'm happy to do that.
What? Okay, great. Hey folks, welcome to tonight's episode of The Good Time Show. This is a show that Sriram, me, and a bunch of folks, motley crew of people, have been doing pretty much every night for the last couple months or so. And we usually cover things related to tech, culture, sometimes movies, TV shows, that kind of thing. And it's about an hour. We try and keep it to around this time. I know it's really difficult for East Coast folks. We try and record some shows from time to time. We do try and do East Coast friendly shows. We get a lot of requests on it, but keep the feedback, keep the requests coming, keep the comments coming. We're on Twitter. I'm Aarthi Sriram K. Today's episode is going to be really good, and we have a lot of people. So I'm going to ask Sriram to do the intros.
Awesome. Okay, so first of all, this is, I think, a little bit of an unusual episode for us because we usually have just one or two speakers. But this is an episode that a lot of you have been asking for quite a while. Unless you've been living under a dark rock in a distant cave, you might have seen that NFTs have pretty much taken over the internet and taken over Clubhouse. And we really wanted to do an episode and do it justice. And we wanted to do it with a lot of the key people at the heart of this. And I am so thrilled and excited and nervous to have the people we have with us today. If you just Google any of them, you will see a zillion press pieces on each one of these folks, and kind of the work that they have done in NFTs. So just so excited for this. Okay, wait, I see we need to get one more person on stage. All right, K1, you're here. Here we go. All right. Okay. So K1's here. So we just want to kind of put together some of the most interesting people doing work. And so let me go through this, and it's really an all-star cast. So first up, we have Roham, CEO of Dapper Labs, who are also behind a little thing called NBA Top Shots, which you might have seen quite just a few times around the internet these days. We have Mike Winkelmann, aka Beeple, a digital artist who's really pushing the boundaries of NFTs and has kind of taken over the internet, in my opinion. We have Justin, aka Blau, who's I think really pushing the boundaries in the music space when it comes to crypto and NFTs. We have, in some ways, we have K1 Tehranian Foundation, which is the best, one of the most interesting ways to create, explore, and collect digital art. We have Scott Lewis, co-founder of DeFi Pulse, and who's deeply involved in NFTX, which we will get to quite deeply in just a bit. We have someone who I've grown up admiring, Kevin Kelly. His title, I think, is Senior Maverick at Wired Magazine, but he actually co-founded Wired in 1993, served as his first executive editor for 7 years, and is just a legend. And I'm just so thrilled to have him here. We have Dylan Field, founder and CEO of Figma, but who's also deeply involved in all things crypto. And we have Chris Dixon, who's my partner at Andreessen Horowitz, who does a lot of things crypto, and probably the person that I go to when I need to know anything about crypto, and he's going to be kicking us off today. And we have Marc Andreessen, who invented the browser and is to blame for everything you see around you today. So with that, and so this is going to be an interesting episode because we have so many people. And what I wanted to do was to go from the very basics, and then we are going to kind of quickly go around the room, and we have some stuff lined up for every person, and we're going to really get into it. And we're going to really nerd out, really go deep. And there's been so much interest. So if you're listening to this and you want to send in questions, just feel free to tweet at us or text us to that phone number that you see in my profile, and we'll try and get to it. Also, we're going to do this a series of these because there's so much interest and so many amazing people. And so we're going to try and do one pretty frequently. So give us thoughts and suggestions. So, but without further ado, I want to start with Chris to go first and just tell us what in blazes is an NFT exactly, and why should we care?
Yeah, great. No, thanks for having me. Sure. So yeah, an NFT is a digital asset, sort of analogous to something like Bitcoin, except it's uniquely associated with a media asset. So something like an image or a video or an audio file, or it could be a piece of code or a game. It's called NFT because it stands for non-fungible tokens. Fungible means like interchangeable, like one Bitcoin's interchangeable for another. Non-fungible tokens, they aren't interchangeable because they represent a unique media asset. NFT has been around for a couple of years. People may have heard a few years ago, Roham can talk about CryptoKitties. There were a bunch of kind of early experiments. A lot of these were built on the Ethereum blockchain. Since then, there was a whole bunch of interesting experiments that went on. But really over the last, few months, they've kind of grown in prominence. We have a lot of people in here who can talk about that. And one sort of obvious question, which I'm sure we'll dig into more, is why now? Why is this sort of happening now? I think that has to do partly with the infrastructure. So the blockchain's kind of the core, base layer infrastructure, like Ethereum scaling solutions, Ethereum wallets, other blockchains like Roham can talk about Flow, and there's a bunch of other kind of blockchains that kind of are working on NFTs. There's sort of websites on top of those blockchains. Kayvon will talk about Foundation. There's other ones like OpenSea and Nifty Gateway. I think very importantly, there's real communities now that have grown up around these things. CryptoPunks is a really active community. There's a whole really interesting crypto art community that folks here in this room can talk about. But it's still very, very early, and it's exciting. I think there's gonna be a lot of experiments run, and it has all the markings in my mind of like a really exciting kind of early movement. But there's so much more work to do that anyone who's sort of listening and excited about this, I think still has a lot of opportunity to kind of join and sort of help build this.
So Chris, I think one follow-up question. Thanks for that, and we're going to get to everybody because I think each one of these it could be an own clubhouse show. We're going to try and get all of it with just the guests we have today. Chris, I guess one follow-up question is why now?
Yeah, well, sort of kind of what I mean. Look, I think it's hard. I think it's a combination of like tech and culture. I mean, I think so. As I mentioned before, some of it is sort of infrastructure. Like you just couldn't have done this 10 years ago. That just didn't exist. The kind of the blockchains that you needed, and maybe you could have, but it would have been very difficult. And so it's been a lot of work by a lot of people. Scott on stage here can talk about the whole DeFi movement, which is this kind of other crypto movement, which I think helped build out a lot of the important pieces here. I think part of it, my own opinion, is cultural. Like people have now seen Bitcoin or heard about Bitcoin for 10 years. And that has, people have understood that maybe Bitcoin is or isn't for them, but they understand the security model a little bit. They've read about it. They kind of get this idea that there's just kind of distributed, decentralized immutable ledger. And when someone says to them, hey, you can, there's a technology that same technology can now secure, a media asset and the provenance of that media asset and the origin, and sort of give you this kind of certificate that says this is the original. Like I think people kind of grok that in a way they may not have a decade ago. And this idea that, I think this idea too, I think that people, are so obviously spend so much time online, but are used to this idea that you maybe you buy some goods in a game or you get various things in a social network, but then they go away. And I believe part of the movement now too is people have this kind of desire to own things in a way they do in the offline world, but they don't currently in the online world. I think personally this is me just pontificating, but I think that's part of kind of this appeal is that, wow, people get the idea of ownership in the offline world, like, why you'd want to own a house or a car or something else. We've never really had that concept in the online world, and now we do. And that's really exciting.
I love this because I think like a lot of us, I grew up online, and I'm going to get to like Mike in just a bit, but I grew up around Deviant Art and all these weird internet forums, and you saw all these amazing creativity, but there was just no concept. I mean, the internet was so much for copying of things and just free, no cost applications. There's no way you could actually own things and prove provenance, which I think is possible today, which I think gets me to probably the next guest I want to get to, which is Mike Winkelmann, but I think the entire world calls him Beeple. And
hey,
Mike, I mean, I did a bunch of prep, and I was looking at your bio, right? You're a digital artist. You work with Eminem, Katy Perry, SpaceX, Nike. But I think when people think of you, one of the things which really interests me about you is one of the themes of the show is people who have been toiling away for many years and then are having a moment right now. And I'm just kind of curious to get your backstory, right? How you got into digital art, how do you get into crypto art? How do you go from there to all of a sudden, or it seems like all of a sudden, you're selling over $3 million of crypto art just in December, you're with Christie's. So tell us your story. Who are you?
Well, yeah, thank you for that intro. I appreciate that. So, yeah, my name is Mike Winkelmann. I release work as Beeple. And the funny part about this is sort of in the digital art community, I'm pretty well known. And I mean, I have like almost 2 million followers on Instagram. So it's not like I just kind of came out of nowhere with this. But I think that speaks to the how sort of separate these worlds were and how much there's a bunch of worlds converging, around this technology. So probably the project that I'm most known for is the Everydays, where I've been doing a picture every single day from start to finish that day for the last over 13 years, since 2007. And that's the piece that is being auctioned with Christie's, is the first 5,000 days of that. So every picture in this giant mosaic that I've made every single day from May 1st, 2007 until January 7th, 2021. So just a couple weeks ago. And so the pictures range from weird Buzz Lightyear milking shit to, sort of more less Buzz Lightyear milking shit. It's a a wide range of sort of like abstract stuff. Some stuff is more abstract, some is more sort of literal, some touches on current events, things that happened even that day. So yeah, that's sort of what I'm kind of mainly known for. And then I also do like short films and VJ clips and a bunch of other stuff.
Mike, I think one thing that really intrigues me about you is like I'm somebody like a lot of people born in the 80s. I've grown up online around message boards and forums, and had wallpaper from like DeviantArt, and so your style and aesthetic is so familiar to me. And one thing which I love is you, and I would never say this unless you said it. You talk about your work often being crap, right? And could you describe your aesthetic and why you say that?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Each picture is, first off, I mean, I truly believe a lot of it is crap. I think I still have a huge amount of room to grow and like get better. And, I think that is a big piece of why I call it crap. The other thing is it's always something that I did, or a lot of, obviously the everydays are something that I did just like in a couple hours that day. So to me, that's more of like a sketch. So it never really turns out quite how I would like it to be. But people are nice to me and they seem to like it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, Mike, for you, you'd also done, this Crossroads, which is this NFT that you'd sold recently, like $6.6 million or so. It's the single most expensive, single NFT sold. Like, what is like the backstory? What is the genesis of that?
Sure. So I am very new to this space, to be quite honest. This is not something that I have, been aware of for years since the beginning, like other people. I came to this space in mid-October. People kept hitting me up and being like, oh, you got to check out NFTs. You got to check out NFTs. And when I finally did, it was just like, oh my God, this is like fucking amazing. Like this is, just such an interesting technology that sort of merges all the things that I'm interested, from art to, I have a computer science degree, to programming to, sort of investing and things like that. So it really just like this light bulb, and I really just kind of fell down the rabbit hole. And the piece that resold, it just resold last week for 6.6 million, was part of the first drop that I did right before the election. There was a piece that sort of was going to change based on who won the election. So when the auction happened, it was in sort of one state where you kind of had Biden and Trump sort of floating, looking like they were going to, beat the shit out of each other. And then depending on who won, it was either going to change to Trump, sort of, kind of with this king hat walking through hell, or the piece that it is now where Trump is dead and people are just walking by and, kind of not giving a shit.
Yeah, which, I think it's like a real world, like a contemporary artist today. This, I think, is just so it's very crypto, and it's only possible in like the age that we are in with like digital art, and where you can be, where it's pretty much a decision that you're making and making it happen.
Mike, I have a question. This is Kevin Kelly.
Hey.
The piece that you resold and the other everydays, do they have built in the contract for their resale that you get you get paid as when they're resold? Is that built into the contract right now?
Yes, that is built in the contract. And so that's fairly standard with NFTs, like across the board, that they have 10% sort of royalty rate, and that can be changed. But sort of the kind of industry standard right now is 10%. So the initial piece sold for $66,000. And then when it resold for 6.6 million, I actually got, 600,000 from that.
Wow,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, and Justin, just following from what we just asked Mike, for you, you are one of those people who've like been on this intersection of finance, crypto, and music, and you've been doing this for years. Where you've had like the first blockchain music festival. I read your backstory. You basically turned down an internship in BlackRock and just got into music, became a DJ, and this has basically been your life. How are you thinking about like where you are from your story that you started to the blockchain festival itself, and now like you've sold $11 million worth of NFT music. I guess for me, question is like, what got you into this world where you're getting into NFT and crypto, that side of things? And the second part is, if I was a record label, or if I was somebody who's in the very traditional music industry side of things, how should somebody like me think about it? Should I be threatened by it? Do you see like record labels embracing it? What's the future here?
Yeah, that's all great. I just have to shout out Mike Beeple for a second, because one of
Yeah.
the things that I kind of felt when Beeple, when you entered the space, because you're kind of the father of digital art and because so many people looked up to you, that's when I knew everything was going to change. When
I
you
appreciate
posted,
that.
dude, when you posted that Into the Ether to your Instagram, I was like, oh shit, this is the moment. And
I
I'm so
appreciate
glad
that,
that I
dude. I
own that.
appreciate that.
I'm so glad that I own that piece today.
Nice, nice.
But dude, like you really set this insane trend in motion, because you represent a collective of artists that have been marginalized and haven't been fairly compensated for the value that you create in the world. And I experienced the same thing with my art director, Slime Sunday, who has been making, the art direction for Blau for the past 5 years. And I'll just kind of backtrack to the question, Aarthi, about where I got started and how this has kind of all evolved. But I basically started my journey in the blockchain space with the Winklevoss twins in 2014, or I think it was around 2014. I actually met them in Mexico on spring break when I was opening up for Avicii at a club in Mexico. Kind of a funny story. And we just hung out, and I have a background in finance, so we could relate on a lot of things. And at that point, they invited me to, hang out with them in LA during Grammy week. It was like a really fun experience. And they were talking about Bitcoin. And I, of course, had no idea what this thing was in 2014. I didn't have a background in that. I had more of a background in, derivatives and economics. And so I was just really excited about this concept of frictionless value transfer in general, right? Like, you don't need a government or a bank to tell you what to do with value transfer. You can just move money anywhere across the world whenever you want to, and you have full control over that. That was just absolutely fascinating to me in 2014. And so fast forward, to 2017, when we saw this ICO boom, I kind of saw a lot of music projects pop up that, had teams with barely any credentials or ties to the actual music business. And so I said, why don't we do something? Why don't we try to create a music festival that the fans could pool money, pick the lineup, right? And then share in the profits of the tickets. Like, why does there need to be a talent buyer that decides who's playing the festival? Why can't fans actually pool money and pick the talent for their own festival? Of course, that would make that token a security. And, at the time, there was no such interpretation. And then security tokens or a securities risk outlook began to kind of formulate within the legal world of the blockchain space. And so instead of doing an ICO, we just, decided to raise equity, because we were very nervous about the idea of issuing a non-compliant token. So this was all in between 2017 and 2018. And we threw this festival in Berkeley with 8,000 people, with Zed and Big Sean and myself and Matt and Kim. And instead of creating a token that, would potentially raise a lot of legal concerns, I worked with the Stellar Lumens team, Interstellar, on building a mobile wallet and creating like just a QR code reward system at this festival, where you would basically, scan QR codes around the festival to earn rewards, and then you could spend those rewards on merchandise and other items in the festival. And of course, these tokens were non-transferable to comply with securities regulation and money transmission laws and all that stuff that we thought about in 2017, because I had a public reputation and I didn't want to take any risk. One of the things that we did back then, and I don't want to talk for too long, but pretty significant moment that I had in my realization of how powerful.
Keep talking.
Okay.
Great.
A significant realization I had in 2018, when I started to explore the NFT space, was I wanted fans to receive something from me as an artist in 2018. If they found me walking around the festival, they could scan the QR code on my phone and they would get a Blau loyalty token on Stellar Lumens. It was just a Stellar token. It was actually technically a fungible token. We just made 50 fungible tokens instead of 50 non-fungible tokens, but that's a technical differential. And so I worked with the Stellar Lumens team on this, and basically if a fan found me at the festival and scanned the QR code on my phone, they got this like rare digital asset that was a Blau loyalty token in their app. And what happened was, like, within 5 minutes, they were gone. Everyone was so excited about owning this like natively rare digital asset in their festival app. And I had this moment in 2018 where I was like, this is definitely the future. But the regulatory environment was too uncertain, and it was hard to say like how long it would take for, everyone to figure out that this was a thing. Fast forward to last summer, I have to give all the credit to a company called Block Party that was doing blockchain ticketing, and an artist named Trevor Jones, who is huge in the crypto art space. I saw Trevor Jones sell his crypto bull to Pablo, who's actually the same original buyer that bought Beeple's political piece that he released that sold for 6.6 million. Pablo was like super ahead of his time in thinking about how this stuff works and how big of a future it had. And I saw this huge sale that Trevor Jones did on Nifty Gateway for $55,000. And I said to myself, wow, it's time again. You know, between 2018 and 2020, you know, COVID obviously influenced this massive, like, just migration to the digital space in a way that we never could have predicted. And all of a sudden, owning something that's digitally native was cool. And Trevor Jones kind of proved that to me. And Pac, another great crypto artist, proved that to me. And so I said, wow, but there hasn't, like, no one's done music yet. So let's try that. So I called my art director, Slime Sunday, who's got a significant Instagram following. And I said, why don't we make some audio visual art? Let's introduce audio to this NFT space that people are really excited about. And we started making clips of animations and music that I would never release on Spotify, because the Spotify algorithm scares the shit out of me. And I don't want to release something that I'm afraid people might not like. So I have all these ideas that I've made. And Mike, I'm sure you could relate. People, I'm sure you could relate. We have ideas that we don't show the world, but we're still really proud of. And I was like, why don't we take these ideas and sell them to people? Like, we spent so much time on these ideas, and yet nothing ever happens with them. So we take this music that I've worked on, we pair it with beautiful visuals that Slime Sunday designed, and there was just native demand for these assets online. And I just saw this grow from what was a $23,000 sale in September of last year to, you know, what happened 3 days ago, which was 11.7 million. And I'm like, oh my God, this is real. It's what I believed in for a long time, but I think that COVID has kind of accelerated this trend to digital ownership and the emotions that that creates for people. And so that's kind of, yeah, that's the journey in short.
Wow, I have so many questions, but I would say, you know, first of all, you have an amazing voice. So we kind of spoke about Chris having an amazing voice, but you have an amazing Clubhouse voice, Justin. So just thought you should know that. And second, just
thanks, man.
That story is so interesting, and we have a bunch of questions, but, you know, I want to come back to you and Mike. There's so much from the story you told us. And I just so many questions, but I want to get to some of our other guests first. And I think up next is you know, Roham. And Roham, you know, I think, you know, look, there's no way around. But before we get that, I have to say we have a new speaker who just came up, the one and only Baron Davis. Baron, can you hear us? Baron? Well, we have Baron Davis as a speaker. You should unmute yourself, but, you know, we're going to try and get him to jump in just a bit. But yeah, the reason I was going to mention Baron is, you know, unless you've been living under a dark rock, you know, NBA Top Shots has been, you know, you can't ignore the phenomenon that is Top Shots. But Roham, I think the question for you is, you know, with Dapper Labs has been around for many years. I think you guys actually one time were working on Facebook apps, which is back when I was working on Facebook. So could you just tell us the backstory of, like, Dapper Labs, you know, going all the way to CryptoKitties, which I think was sometime around like 2017, and all the way to Top Shots now? Because I'm not sure folks realize how long you've been, you know, at this.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Sriram, and thank you for having me. So the story of Dapper Labs. So Dapper Labs, actually, we started formally in February of 2018, and, you know, Chris Dixon and Fred Wilson were two of the first people that believed in us and helped us create a company to go after the vision. CryptoKitties, we funded and developed out of my previous company, which was Axiom Zen, and that was sort of a venture studio where we worked on many different ideas. And actually, many of the first team members. I mean, I started with my brother, and Pierre is in the audience here. Dieter is my CTO now at Dapper Labs, and so that was the incubator venture studio that we created CryptoKitties out of. But really, the idea with Dapper Labs was, you know, we've to Blau's point, we've proven that customers want this, and, you know, something we didn't really share externally was CryptoKitties had 6,000-7,000 MAU the entire time, even throughout, you know, the worst of crypto winter. Customers really want to own assets and communities that they care about, and sort of have agency in this way. And we just needed to build out the infrastructure, make sure that both from a sort of technology and platform perspective, as well as from a user experience, payments, safety, onboarding perspective, we've created something that can support something like the NBA. And so, it was a little bit of a crazy idea from 2018 to sort of, just start building, and we didn't know how long it would take. And at first we started trying to build on Ethereum, but then ended up deciding that we have to go our own way, and built out a whole new blockchain over the course of a year or so. Launched everything publicly in October of last year, and so far we're almost at $300 million in peer-to-peer volume, which is 10x what CryptoKitties did, or has done. It did $1 million yesterday, so it's still moving. But we kind of just showed you take the limitations away, and you can create communities that are real. And to Chris's point, it's the community that I think is different this time around, where there's thousands of people that get it, and so when the hundreds of thousands come, there's already sort of a group of folks that can explain some of the details, lay people's fears at rest. Hey, look, this is all actually secured by the blockchain. It's super transparent. You're more in control than you ever were before, and people really like that.
Love it. But that number is just amazing. And hey, Baron, can you hear us?
Hey, what's up? Sorry, that was my kid. My kid was just woke up. He needs some attention. Thanks for having me, guys and ladies.
Thanks for joining us. Baron, but we're going to get you just a bit, because I think I have so many questions, including what moments from your career you want to see with Roham's work. Roham, I want to ask you, you've been at this for so long, and in some ways I think you're living in the eye of the hurricane. At what point over the last, say, 6 months to a year did you feel like, oh my gosh, this might be something real? Because it feels like you are at the heart of pop culture now in so many ways.
Well, I mean, I like to think we've sort of held conviction throughout the past 3 years, because it was a lot of work to get here, and to keep 100 people sort of rowing in the same direction for that period of time, when maybe the wider market didn't even know what an NFT was, say 6 months ago. So we've had a lot of conviction for a long time. The thing that I've been it's just so cool is how quickly kind of basketball culture has really made Top Shot its own thing. And when you had Adam Lefko and Shaq on TNT saying put it on the Top Shot, or Damian Lee and Tyrese Halliburton swapping Top Shots instead of swapping jerseys, like that's just so cool to see. I mean, today, I don't know if you saw, but the NBA announced the Rising Stars through a Top Shot pack.
Oh wow!
And, that's the kind of engagement that, to be frank, I expected we'd need to sort of prove things out over the course of longer. But I'm just so excited that it's happening now, and that it just feels so authentic, and it feels like we're just getting started.
Well, congratulations, and I know it's been such a long journey, and I'm just so happy for you folks. We're going to ask you a lot more, but I think up next, I want to go to K1 Tehranian, and who's the founder and CEO of Foundation. K1, just like I think the others we have spoken to, you are also at the heart of all things crypto art. And could you just talk to us about when you see collectors and they see the trends that is motivating them, what is motivating all these collectors, and what are you seeing in the space, especially with Foundation, and what role does Foundation play in all of this?
Yeah. Thanks, Sriram. Yeah, I mean, collectors. There's many collectors on stage. I mean, Justin, I know, is a prominent collector. He's collected already on Foundation, so it'd be great to hear from him as well. But I think, as we've mentioned, it's a totally new behavior on the internet that we've never had before. And so we have all of these incredible artworks that have always lived on the internet and that we've given millions of likes to, right? And I think Mike's talked about this. He has millions of followers on Instagram that are giving him millions of likes. but there's now an opportunity for a fan, a true fan, to come in there and actually own that artwork. And I think that that just creates a totally different relationship between the collector, the artist, and the artwork. And that's something really special, and we've never had that on the internet. And I think what you're seeing with collectors is that relationship just kind of feeding off of itself, right? Where it's like you have that experience once, and it's so real that I think you end up saying, like, I want to go support and find other artworks I love, to the point where, like, I think people en masse are going to be doing this, and they're doing it right now, and that's why you're seeing this explosion, because the behavior is so real. And then also, I think just in crypto, there's just this general desire to be first, to be early, to be a tastemaker, to push things forward. And we're just in that moment where there's just an incredible opportunity to be collecting, first pieces from just every artist you've known and gotten so, accustomed to just seeing their work. And now you can own it. And I think a lot of people are just jumping at that opportunity and experiencing that for the first time, and it's a really real feeling. And I'll even personally speak, I've collected from probably over 10 artists at this point, and I just have such a deeper connection to each of them now, and that's something that we've now created through this technology. And I think we're going through the process where the culture is absorbing it, and it's going to change, and it's a special moment. And I think that's why this room's packed right now as well.
Yep. By the way, I have to say, thank you so much, Kevin. I have to say, we are getting just so many tweets and DMs, and kind of like that's just testament to just the people here who are just really pushing the culture and the technology forward. So thank you, and thank you for everybody tweeting us. We'll try and get to some of the questions and comments, during this show. Up next, I want to go to Scott. So Scott's a co-founder of DeFi Pulse and deeply involved with the NFTX. Scott, I'm just curious to get your take. Could you just explain to us what NFTX is, and like how do you think the worlds of DeFi and NFTs would like wind up intersecting in like the months and years to come?
Yeah. So the first thing to know about NFTX is it's an open organization. With kind of tokenized with a governance token. And so it functions like a lot differently than a startup. And it like really puts the focus on like open source work, open protocols, and then also just sort of like the way basically anyone can contribute to NFTX. And then like if contributors are making good contributions, they may be invited to like kind of be paid, which we're about to announce the first slate tomorrow of like a consumer products focused squad. But what NFTX's like MVP protocol is it's these kind of vaults or D1 funds where you can put any NFT that's like a floor CryptoPunk or a hash mask into the vault, and then you can get an ERC20 token back. And then you can use that ERC20 token in DeFi, whether like on Uniswap or wherever. And then when you want to get a hash mask or a CryptoPunk back from the vault, you just burn that token, and then you can get randomly any of the NFTs in that vault back. So it kind of creates a different type of marketplace than sort of the bulletin board style systems that you see for most kind of one-off NFTs.
That's fascinating. Okay, I'm going to come back to you. I think, but just kind of round out the intros, and this is an amazing group, but I think in some ways this person was kind of like one of the first people to really understand the power of a small community of fans and what it can bring. So Kevin, I've been a fan of yours for decades, and and I think in some ways you're kind of the OG person to bring optimism to technology. And I grew up reading Wired. I would love to kind of get your take on just what you're seeing in the space now, and also how this is tied to your original piece on 1,000 true fans, because I think so much of this is tied to building online shelling points of communities, be it Justin's fans or Mike's
Yeah.
fans. So just curious to get your take on what you see happening now and how this ties to your 1,000 true fans comment.
Well, I wanted to explore a paradox that I see emerging. And that paradox is sort of based on the general trend in the last couple of decades in the digital world that we've been moving from ownership to access. So as it became clear that we could reach for any music anywhere in the world, anytime, it became less and less important that you owned the music and more that you had access to it, like with Spotify and others. The same thing happened with films and movies and videos, where you could have anything you wanted, or you could watch anything you wanted at any time, anywhere, by getting access to it. And so therefore owning a film or a movie or a video or DVD became actually a liability. And that's been true across books and now art, where the aspect or the benefits of ownership keep decreasing while the benefits of access keep increasing. And now we have these NFTs, which are sort of going in the opposite direction. They're kind of moving ownership forward again. And the question that I'm asking is this seems like a paradox, because it may be that the ownership is still a liability. You have to store it, you have to catalog it, you have to secure it, you have to find it, you have to be able to retrieve it. And these things are non-fungible, so they can be destroyed. And most of the things that most people buy are never resold. Most of the stuff in the world that we buy and purchases is not resold. They're worn out, or we discard them, or they're disposable, or we forget about them. And so these things are kind of going in the opposite direction of the general trend. And I wanted to kind of explore that paradox, because it seems to go against the general drift of what we've been seeing in the digital world overall.
So Kevin, I think that's a great point. I think that you could look at that question from two sides. One is the kind of the user, the person buying the NFT, and the other is the creator. I think an important point is creator economics, right? And I would maybe ask Justin, for example. I think, Justin, I saw you tweeting. I think you were tweeting about this, or maybe I superimposing something there. But like, my understanding of the music economics is, like, if somebody plays 1 million songs of yours on Spotify, you get, I don't know, something on the order of $1,000 or something. And whereas a lot of the economics in music, I think, has shifted to the offline world because of the scarcity of merchandise and things like this. And so, I think the access model, as you describe it, hasn't been great for, I think, musicians, for visual artists, for, a whole bunch of other kinds of, maybe video games have been the one, kind of category that's done well. So, I think you got to look at it from both sides. Like, I don't know. I would put it to the artists in the room, I guess, who know much more about it than I do.
Yeah, Chris, you oh, sorry. Someone else was going to say something?
No, go for it, Justin.
Chris, you're 100% right. I think that in the past decade, all of my income has been primarily touring income for performance. And that makes sense, because people pay for tickets to come to see me perform. They get an exclusive experience that they can only get once in that moment of time. Whereas the entire world has treated digital content as completely pervasive and easily copied for forever, right? Since the existence of the internet. It's really easy to copy a file. What's interesting is that all this media creates emotions in people, and capturing the value of those emotions is pretty much impossible the way that the internet has existed since its incipiency, right? So when you think about, like, in my case, my favorite example that I like to give people is, there have been a bunch of weddings from fans of mine where my fans who are getting married will walk down the aisle to the acoustic version of one of my songs called How You Love Me. And it's a significant moment in their lives. And all of them will message me and say, hey, check out this video. We walked down the aisle to the acoustic version of your song, How You Love Me. And I'm like, wow, the fact that I could create that value in their lives is absolutely incredible. But there's no way to capture that. you can't capture that emotional value with, Chris, as you said, a third of a cent per stream, right? Like, does the emotional value you get from a song really equal a third of a cent if you really love it? So there's this huge discrepancy between the emotional value people receive from music and what's actually being paid out from a streaming platform. And that's why I've been so excited about NFTs, is because when you own something, it gives you a different feeling. And I think Marc Andreessen in the room gave my favorite example that I use in every conversation, which is the Honus Wagner baseball card example. Mm-hmm. It's 50 cents of physical goods and $3 million worth of virtual goods. I mean, Marc, do you want to give that example? Because it's my favorite.
Yeah, that's it. It's like we're all surprised that there are these things called virtual goods, but it's like, Sriram, sort of famously within his friend group, collects sneakers that he doesn't wear, which is just as like, as a Midwestern kid from the 70s, is the craziest thing I've ever heard of. But like, it's like whatever. It's like, it's like $5 of plastic. It's like $300 of retail costs. There's $295 of something in there. Right. And, some of that is distribution and marketing and so forth. But like a lot of that adds up exactly to what you're saying. It adds up to an emotion. It adds up to a feeling. It adds up to an affinity. It adds up to a sense of tribal identity. It adds up to self-expression. It adds up to, being able to appreciate aesthetics and being able to appreciate different kinds of art and being able to, appreciate different kinds of culture. And so, it's like, those sneakers or that baseball card are much more about the intangibles already today. Right. And of course, like these examples themselves aren't new. Like if you go back further in time, this is the origin of art, like of actual art. Like, my avatar these days is Lorenzo de Medici. And like, he was, patronizing all these artists who would use, whatever, and, in current dollars, whatever, I don't know, $10 of paint and canvas to, paint the Mona Lisa. Right. Like the Mona Lisa is, 99.999% a virtual good. And then I think there's like a criticism of this, which is like these things are somehow lesser because they're virtual. And I take the other point of view, which is I think they're more, which is to say they're kind of further up the stack of sort of human creativity, and they're further up the stack in terms of self-actualization. And so it's like, right, when we have our material needs taken care of, like that's when we really start to think about things like art and culture in all of its different forms. And that's when we really start to think about like what it means to be a human being and what it means to be part of a community and what it means to express ourselves. And that's where all this stuff becomes, I think, actually like extremely important. And in the long run, maybe the most important things.
Maybe I actually, one person I want to get a take on this is actually Baron. Baron, I'm kind of curious, just get your take on this question, because in so many ways, I think like Marc made fun of my, sneaker collection, but the sneaker community has always had recognition of the intangibles, right? Everyone knows what the flu game was. Everyone knows what Jordan 11s mean. And I think there's always been a connection to that. But I'm kind of curious to get your take on, just this, and also like what excites you about NFTs in general?
Yep.
Thank you for having me. No, I'm super excited. One, just to hear everybody talk and speak about it. I think the most important thing that, that we talked about or that I've heard is ownership, right? Is passion, is emotion, right? And something that, people feel holds special value to them, right? And so, for me, I think whether it's a sneaker, whether it's a trading card, whether it's clothes, whether it's digital art, they all play a part in, let's say, the theme and the narrative of your life, right? So as a young kid growing up collecting basketball cards, I still have those basketball cards today because that was the way that I got a chance to interact with the NBA, right? Top Shop now for my kid is giving them the experience to interact with the NBA, but also to hold on to that memory of interaction that they saw. So I think that, one for, when I start thinking about it, it's like, think about the ownership for the athlete, right? If we're talking about Spotify, right? And Three Lou was talking about, ownership of his album and what he did. Imagine when, Vince Carter gets to, basically partner and now have ownership right, in something that he created, right, that he can authenticate and the fans can be a part of, right? And so whether it's scarcity or a moment, I feel like, we are in this, amazing time where, digital is actually taking shape,
Mhm.
right? And we have the opportunity to build, kind of a new infrastructure, right? And a new time capsule for, our kids and and their future.
Yeah, and let me just add one more thing. Those are great points. Just one more thing on I think Kevin's original question, which is like, think of it the other way around, right? It's like, well, ask any art collector if they've got a piece of original art hanging on their wall. Ask them if they feel threatened by the fact that there are an infinite number of digital representations of that art that are freely available to everybody in the world, right? Or that there are an infinite number of cheap prints, right? That basically, like, visually these days, like, prints are really good, and so like it's actually can be hard to tell, whether something is like a recreation of the original. And as somebody like, does the art collector feel like their art is less valuable because they're reproductions that aren't the real thing? And of course, and again, the extreme case of this is the Mona Lisa worth less today, hanging in the Louvre than it was, 100 years ago when it was, not easy to get a reproduction of it at all. But, today it's trivially easy to get it. And of course, the answer is, the Mona Lisa is worth far more today. And so the sort of tie of something unique in the sense of ownership is I think, like, is for these kinds of things is extremely primal.
So
I just
I'm
want to
wondering if we are imagining whether the portion of art that is collected overall compared to all the other art that is sold. So like most of the music in the world, would we expect a large portion of it to be kind of collected and owned? Because right now the art world that's collected is a very small part of the total world of visuals and design. And so do you kind of imagine this expanding the realm of changing people's attitude about art in general? Is that part of the vision?
I think it's massively so, Kevin. We're all connected to the internet now, and it's going to just create. I mean, the internet democratizes, right? And so it just becomes that much more accessible. And in this case, I think we're going to move into a world where, like, everyone's going to have quote unquote an art collection. I think that's going to sound very that's pretentious to us right now because so few people can afford to custody and put expensive art in their house. But in the internet sense, I mean, everyone's going to want to have an identity and an expression, and I think everyone's going to want to do that, and the internet's going to enable that. I mean, it's as simple as having an internet connection and a crypto wallet, and we're rapidly seeing that be adopted, at a compounding rate. So I don't know when we'll hit that inflection point, but it's happening. And I think it's going to change art collecting. Like, I think art collecting sounds really, really pretentious just because of the current culture. But I think the future culture is going to think of art collecting as like, you have an online identity and everyone has an online identity.
Yeah,
I have
and
a few
I
thoughts
also,
here.
I'm sorry, Dylan. Go ahead.
I was going to say I have a few thoughts here. I mean, I think that, first of all, one thing that's always driven a lot of different artistic movements and different periods is the question of what is art. And I think that this is no different. But also, I think that if you look at the history of the NFT space, and I've been watching this since, I guess, sort of like fall 2017 now, and we've kind of gone from art to games to speculative communities back to art again. And I think that that cycle will continue. And what we're going to see is we're going to see people really engage with the communities they care about. And NFTs will be a financialization, speculation, a way to basically have financial incentives attached to their fandom of those communities. And those might be of artists, they might be of games, they might be of musicians, might be of designers, they might be of different classes of media that we're not really talking about today. But I think that it's going to end up monetizing creation in a different way. I think it's going to end up, as we're seeing, if you have financial incentives, it also really creates a rabid fan base and will end up almost being sort of like a decentralized Patreon in some ways. I think there's also infrastructure that doesn't exist yet that we're going to see come into existence. For example, I think that the communities and Discord channels that are popping up around some of these projects are extremely interesting. And I think that over time, what we're going to see is basically as folks like Beeple or Blau create more art, put out there, they have more centralized ownership groups. Those communities, they'll have like their ticket in, which is the NFT, and then they'll sort of talk in public spaces about the art. It'll be almost like a moderated conversation. I also think that over time, this will become even bigger as we get to gaming, and that's an entirely another world where we get to more of the metaverse.
Yeah, I just want to chime in here because I think we're talking about
Yeah.
a false dichotomy, because NFTs aren't just about ownership; they're also about access. I mean, Justin's NFTs give the owners access to him and to future things he will release, and NFTs are just keys that are owned by. They can be created by anyone and owned by the people that that buy them, rather than living on third-party websites. Or platforms like, let's say, Ticketmaster, Facebook, Instagram, etc. So in effect, we're kind of talking about a false distinction here, because you can create NFTs that are free and that just represent ownership. You can create them, and the fact that they're digital means they can be very cheap if they're on a blockchain like Flow, where the transaction fees are cheap. And those are access keys that an artist or a creator can sell, or a brand like the NBA can sell directly to their fans, like a physical object, and it's not controlled by a game company or by a Fortune 500 sort of social media platform. It's sort of the relationship is direct. So I just wanted to make that quick point. Obviously, here people are smarter about art than I am, but.
No, dude, you're changing the world, bro. You're changing the world.
I love it. Okay, wait. I want to quickly recap the room, because we have so much to get into still. So for everyone joining in, thank you. This is the nightly Good Time show that we do at 10 p.m. Almost every single weekday. We have guests and cover things in technology and culture. And this is probably one of the most interesting episodes we've ever done, with pretty much the who's who pushing the world of NFTs forward. You can pretty much Google anybody on the face file at the top, and you will see, how they're just doing some amazing work. So, and if you want to just send in questions, you can tweet at us. There is a text number that you can text questions to on my profile. But yeah, keep them coming. This has been amazing to listen to. Avichal, I think you have a question. I wanted to throw to you.
Yeah, so I kind of had a question somewhere at the intersection of everything with Dylan, Kevin, Kayvon, you all were talking about. The financial incentives here I think are really interesting. I think Roham, you'll probably have some thoughts on this too. I'm curious, especially from the creator side, how do you all think this plays out? Like, is this a space where, given now, what looks to be a lot of money at play, that the big brands and rights holders and the traditional media folks that have IP come in and say, hey, this is real, and they're the sort of dominant use cases? There was sort of, I think Niantic and Pokemon might be an example where people have such affinity to existing brands that's actually what they gravitate towards. Or do you think this is more internet native and this is really unlocks the tail for independent creators? And I'm just curious how you think that sort of dynamic plays out, given that it does look like there's gonna be a lot of money at stake.
Yeah, Avichal, it's gonna be both over time. And I think that it almost doesn't matter at this point. We've hit such an inflection point in people adopting and recognizing NFTs as a collectible. I think what's going to happen is, first, we're going to see a bunch of different independent creators that are realizing that they can really connect with their fan base over this medium. And then over time, we're going to see these bigger brands and franchises, as you pointed out. But I also think it's going to come in waves. What we've seen in the past for NFTs is that there usually are hype cycles around different projects, because that's what you get with speculative activity, is hype cycles. And then over time, if you're able to maintain that community, then it's going to be really powerful. And so I think we're going to see a bunch of those cycles all at once right now. It'll die down for a bit, but this is here to stay as well.
Well, I mean, I can give you my experience running Foundation, which is it is absolutely in the hands of independent creators right now. They are the ones that can move fast. They own their IP. They're experimental, and they're the ones absolutely driving this revolution. The money is obviously attracted all sorts of attention, but big brands, institutions, they have a lot of questions. They have a lot of hangups. They don't know how to move forward. They have to hold and consider their existing business models. And so it really is something that is in the hands of independent creators right now. Will that change? I mean, I think the money is of course gonna attract them. I don't know how it plays out exactly, other than I do think this is a democratizing revolution. And so, you know, of course, established players will enter, but ultimately, you know, a 20-year-old with a wallet can create their career now, without ever having to go through a gallery or a record label. There's just new, there's new powers here, and so I think I think that's what it's about. I don't. That's why I get up every day.
I just wanted to say that for the past 4 days, I've gotten at least 10 times the amount of text messages that I did on my birthday in January in the past 4 days. It's all from, you know, executives from the legacy world and also from other musicians. I would say that like some of the conversations I've had have been so frightening, to the extent that there is so much FOMO from the traditional music world. And I've actually elected to kind of turn that off, because there's so much noise and people are so excited about the dollar signs and not thinking about how to create value. I have to say, I haven't slept for like the past 4 nights since we did the auction. It's been kind of crazy. And I'm lucky that my management team flew into Vegas last night, just to understanding the magnitude of what happened. And some of the conversations that are happening in the background are really scary, in the sense of the legacy world's kind of understanding that they are being challenged. And they are scrambling. And I can say that personally, like the biggest legacy music companies are fucking scrambling to figure out how to capture this. And it's really interesting.
My hope is that we get to a point where people really recognize the value of this technology for creating community, rather than turning into a pure tool to drive monetary value. I don't think this can be the case, because there's too much monetary value to drive, unfortunately. And that's why we're going to kind of see these cycles unveil and unfold. But I do think that I'm a believer in the long-term value of building communities through NFTs.
I think actually I was going to get to this question, Justin. I'm happy you brought this up, which is the reaction of the legacy world to this. And I'm just curious. I mean, Justin touched upon this. Mike, I'm curious. I mean, because you've kind of been like interacting with the I would say the old school world, with Louis Vuitton and Christie's. What has your experience been with kind of the old school, well-known brands in fashion and art, be they brands or auction houses, and how they are reacting to your work and to NFTs? It's kind of like the art world parallel to what Justin was talking about with the music industry.
Sure. To be quite honest, I am quite new to these, sort of traditional art world, because being a digital artist, that is not part of being a digital artist. Prior to this, it was client work, freelance work. Nobody was making their living as a quote unquote artist, where they had collectors and that, because before NFTs, it just wasn't possible. But I am seeing, there's definitely, I get a sense that there is some sort of both fear and extreme interest in this from the traditional world. And I think it's something that you're going to see a lot of traditional artists. It's going to push them to make their art more digital. And I think you're going to see a lot of digital artists. It's going to potentially push them to make their art more physical. And so I think it's really just going to unlock this explosion on both sides of creativity. And I think it's just going to be a really, really exciting time. And I don't think, to the earlier point of what is, our brand's going to come in or this or that. I think this is going to be like, what is the use case for the internet? There's a million use cases. We're still figuring it out. And I think this is going to be like that. I think it's going to be so broad that you're going to have, Beanie Baby NFTs that, I don't personally give a fuck about. And you're going to have, really cool art projects, that would be something that I'd be interested in. So I think, the established players will come in and they'll do things. And if they have value, those things will, stick around. And if they come in and it's a, kind of bullshit cash grab, it really won't stick around. So I think people will get wise to the difference between those two pretty quickly.
By the
Yeah,
use
I
case
think-
for the internet is such a great line. I'm going to steal that line.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope, I just copyrighted and I just NFT'd it.
Somebody tweeted us saying, "Can we NFT this episode?" Which I was like, "Huh." Okay, Chris, I know you have a question.
Yeah. Well, the question I think about a lot is, assuming people on stage and in the audience, sort of agree with this movement and the kind of direction it's headed, how do we want the next 12, 24, 36 months to play out? What can we do and other people who are interested in the space do to kind of contribute to a positive outcome? And I guess related to that, what are the negative outcomes, including, I don't know, a deluge of bad stuff or too much speculation, et cetera. Just like what, I guess I'd just love to kind of go around and hear people, how they think things will play out, and what can we do, to the extent we have some influence to contribute to a good outcome, and what are the risks?
I think my biggest thing.
I agree.
We're all thinking
for sure.
about.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good outcome.
And I don't want that to happen. And I want to encourage people to buy stuff that actually makes them feel stuff, and not to buy stuff in assumption of making a profit. I think it's so important to distinguish that, because there is, I just want to say this, I don't want to hate on the guy, but like Ian Bellina comes out of the internet and starts saying who's making money on NFTs on Twitter. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not what we want right now. We want people to buy stuff that they're excited about, that represents self-expression. We don't want people to start buying stuff because they think they can flip it for 1,000x. I mean, this is the same problem that we saw in 2017 that just crushed an incredible technology and discredited something that we were all excited about, right? And so I feel a responsibility after what just happened this weekend, and I've been talking to a lot of my friends about this. I feel a strong personal responsibility to the universe to say, please, like, buy stuff that you like, that you don't want to sell. Like, I'm never selling my Beeple that I own, that I could easily make $170,000 on today. I am not selling it because I love it, because it represents something that's meaningful to me, and I will hold that for the rest of my life and hopefully pass it on to my kids, because it's such a moment of history, right? And I think that people just need to understand that, yes, there's inevitably going to be speculation in this new world, but please, like, buyer beware, right? Like, this is a new age, and this is not about making money, it's about expression. And I think people should just be careful, that's all.
I think I look back at, and this was something that I was kind of worried about too, like, because it is very speculative right now. And I think, I've talked to a couple people about this, and sort of comparing it again to the sort of early days of the internet and the .com bubble. And that kind of, it wiped out a lot of the crap, but it didn't wipe out the internet. People still use the internet, and people kept using the internet. And that's what I think will probably play out with this. I think there is going to be a deluge of crap, and, some people will lose money on that stuff. And that's where I think people need to be very careful about, thinking about the things that they're buying. Is this something that is going to have real, true lasting power, value wise? And so, but I don't think it's going to be something that sort of wipes out NFTs. I think the technology itself is agnostic enough and strong enough that it will survive, kind of, some of these bullshit use cases.
I agree, by the way. I only wanted to, because Chris said, what's the worst case? And so I wanted to illustrate the worst case, but I do think that there's an incredible positive case here, where people are using NFTs for self-expression, which is something we do in fashion, something that we do on Instagram with our selfies and photos that we take with friends. People's tastes become a part of their public image and profile. And that is something that, used to kind of exist in music with blogs and kind of this less centralized world where everything is kind of positioned in one place. What NFTs do is it just creates this opportunity where someone can own digital assets that are interoperable across all platforms in the internet, and they represent someone's taste, and that is so powerful in and of itself.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, Justin, just following up from what you just said, there are lots and lots of people who are now really excited about this. I think folks here have been talking about how you've just been getting a lot of messages from folks in the industry, that kind of thing. right now in the last hour or so on Twitter, we've just been seeing this huge influx of just messages, people just being enthusiastic. So I guess I have a couple of questions here. One is, if you are new to the space and you're just getting started and you are excited about it, you see the opportunity, how do you get started? Like, what should you do? And for folks who've been in this, creators, founders who really see the value of NFT, what happens from here? Like, what do they do to, like, not just like to what Dylan said, not just see the monetary value side of things, but just add more to this and make this a really good sustainable platform? What happens there? So I have these two, and we can start with somebody who's just enthusiastic and who's just getting into this. Where should they get started and what should they do? And I'll throw it to the room, whoever wants to pick this up, because there's just a huge set of people here from like different parts of it. So I just wanted to like throw it to the room.
Well, I would say, I would imagine most listeners are watching social media or participating on social media, and they're probably watching creators who they've followed for years, experiment with the medium. And I think that you have an opportunity to watch what they're doing. And if you've really loved that person's work, it's a new form of patronage. And I would go in without the expectation of financial profit. I mean, at the end of the day, it is an asset, and that's what makes it so powerful. But in my case, I haven't sold any of my NFTs, despite, as Justin mentioned, like getting many offers for above what I paid. But I've been like, no, this is a piece that I wanted to own for so long, and this is the first time I've ever been able to do it. And so I think it's just like, find a creator that you followed on social media, and if they're going out and experimenting, participate in that auction, participate in that drop. You don't even have to win the auction. I've spoken to like many people in the past month who have participated in auctions on Foundation that just love the idea that they could potentially own the piece that the creator was sharing. And I think that's a great first step.
Yeah, that's great.
I want to go to like like Scott here. Scott, in many ways you're kind of tied to, I would say, the original cypherpunk hardcore crypto community. And I'm kind of curious about, like, when you think about that, did you ever how do you think about like the intersection of like that culture and what we're hearing with like Justin and Mike and the art world, because they often seem so different, but how do you kind of see these two cultures interacting?
I think I do come from like grassroots Ethereum land, and I think there's sort of like grassroots Ethereum kind of like, there's a lot of reasons why it broke off from Bitcoin, but I think like Ethereum community is very much kind of like the peace, love, and rock and roll sort of like branch of Bitcoin. And a lot of people like want to build. If I think about like the ethos that drives the Ethereum community, it's sort of like the culture from Ian M. Banks' books. And it's like I think being part of like this digital renaissance is something that's very much like in the blood of the Ethereum community. And there was sort of like the CryptoKitties first NFT boom that brought a lot of people in. And when like the ICO bubble burst and there's kind of a large freezing of kind of the Ethereum economy, a lot of that stuff kind of died or went on life support. But now that it's kind of roaring back, all the people that joined the Ethereum community to like be a part of that first like mini movement are now like really leading full into this. And I think there's a lot of people that really want to work with the artists that are coming in. And there's a lot of people that really want to build like build the tech behind these projects. And I don't know, it's just been really exciting to kind of like see a lot of people wanting to join. And really, if there's people out there that like want to get involved, like there's just a lot of things around like the Ethereum community where people are building and they're kind of like open projects, and you can just jump in and really kind of go from being like the consumer of the NFTs to kind of being more part of what's happening. And I think it's like a pretty powerful, I've seen like a lot of people make the decision to switch to doing that. And like they've been pretty happy about the life path change.
I love that, Scott, and I think I love it because I think coming from you, you're kind of so close to the sort of the grassroots Ethereum world. That's just such a fantastic perspective. I love that. I think, by the way, it just I think on kind of a slight tangent for what you're talking about is I think one around scale, and I think Roham, I would like kind of like throw this to you. I think it's like you folks are under tremendous load right now. And it's just an amazing spot to be. But I'm kind of curious, like, how far are we from a world where, just the entire infrastructure can support, maybe potentially like millions of concurrent transactions? Are we talking, a year? Are we talking 5 years? Like, what kind of steps do we need to get from here to there? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, right now, the all of the problems that Top Shot is facing are actually pretty traditional scaling problems with, sneaker bots and DDoS attacks and security and this sort of thing. So we haven't started stressing out Flow yet. And so we have bandwidth on Flow. We've got more projects launching on mainnet. Ben Morrow just did a drop this morning on Vive.com, $2 million in 3 minutes. Everything's sold out. So Flow itself, I think, can handle quite a bit more. But when you're talking kind of, global scale, hundreds of millions of people and millions of applications, developers, creators, artists, etc. I don't think we're that far. And I think the combination is going to be, blockchains like Flow, Ethereum scaling solutions, layer 2, etc. For certain applications, I think they may work. And then, some companies are trying things with sort of more centralized blockchains and private blockchains, et cetera, which I think are probably a bridge too far for most consumers. It's just not authentic enough. But I think we're single digit years away from being able to handle considerable volume through a combination of different scaling factors. But the reality is, I don't see necessarily, for example, NBA Top Shot, like I said, most of the application is actually off chain, and we with the assets themselves are on the blockchain. But the blockchain component is a component of the stack rather than sort of 100% of the logic going on chain. So the future projects may be different, but I'm pretty optimistic now that I think the rate limiting factor is ideas that get consumer interest rather than infrastructure. So I think that's an exciting place to be.
Yeah, I think that's great. We are way over time, and it's almost 2:30 in the morning for East Coast folks. So thanks for everyone who's been staying up super late to listen to this. This has been a really great room, pretty packed through and through. I wanted to just wrap with one last question and just like ask around the room on just what, like, if there's one prediction that each of you could make, and this could be a prediction about, where does it all go in the next like year, couple years, a decade or so from now. Where do you think this is going to go in each of your relative fields? I think, you have like fields here with respect to digital art, music, building platforms, marketplace, in whatever aspect of NFT that you are into, what's the one prediction that you want to make? And I'm just throwing it to the room, so feel free to pick it up. Maybe Mike, do you want to start?
Sure. I think in terms of digital art, I think this is really going to be, I honestly think it's going to be the next chapter of sort of art history. I think this is going to allow true collection of digital art. And I think you're going to see people sort of look back over the history of the last 20 years of this artwork that there was no way to collect it in the past. And I think, there's going to really be some looking back at who were the sort of, major players and major trends over that time. And it will be, seen as a big sort of movement and a big sort of, kind of line in the sand and the next big chapter of art history. So I'm just super, super excited for that. And I think, exposing digital art to the wider traditional art world is is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Justin, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I guess this is maybe an unfair prediction because I probably know the results. But I will say the past 4 days, at least like half of the top 10 artists on Spotify are inquiring and are excited about issuing NFTs, as well as like some of the top athletes that that I have friendships with. And so I think that in the next 2 months, we're going to see an influx of both supply, hopefully high quality supply, and consumption. We're going to see a lot of fans start to think about how they want to convert into this ecosystem. And maybe that on-ramp is what Roham has built at Top Shot. Maybe that on-ramp is Nifty Gateway that enables you to buy Ethereum, ERC 721s with a credit card. But I will say that like the biggest people are about to enter, and we're going to see a lot of development in the next 60 days on how this will go. And that's exciting. I think that that's really positive, and I think that hopefully these big artists will play right and create value for their fans, and their fans will be really excited to engage in this new ecosystem. And one last thought, what people said, nailed it. I think that we're living in the modern technological renaissance, so it's going to be fun.
I love that. I love it. Just add on, I think it's going to be ownership. The future is in collaborations, right? So we're seeing, kind of like the first wave of art, and that is going to be valuable. So Mike, as his collection builds, as the years build, he will always have a piece of his first piece, and his family, his estate. So the ownership is really, I think, the future, but collaborations, new art, when the athletes, right, start figuring out that, they can have their ownership rights, not only in the NBA, but the things that they do in summer league, the things they do in training, right? The artists can drop mixtapes, right? And then also designers will be there to collaborate. So digital sneakers, physical sneakers. So, I think that, there's going to be, a need for trust, right? And systems and studios where people can build these things where, it's protected and trusted. And I think that's where, our future lies, and it's super bright.
I'll make a prediction. If this is to succeed at a global scale and it becomes sort of a dominant form of how we consume art, then there should be trillions of NFTs being minted every year. And I think the platform that can handle that will be making most of the money not from the people who are finding and selling gold, but in managing the ownership of it, of dealing with all the chores of owning things, like securing, backing up, finding it, cataloging it, and all the other liabilities of ownership will be taken up by that platform. And that is where most of the money will be made.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, I go for it.
Go ahead, Dylan. Go ahead.
Sure. Like I was saying earlier, I think that NFTs will be the cornerstone for a bunch of creator and celebrity communities. I think we're going to see permissionless remixing, and we're going to start seeing people remix NFTs in different contexts. And I think that ultimately this is part of an even broader trend. Marc is in the room. Had the quote, "Software's eating the world" back in 2011. We're a decade later now, and it's almost a cliche, but the entire physical world is becoming digital, and this is the latest example of that.
Yeah.
I think that we might be in a hype cycle, and people might be disillusioned, but I think the technologists in the room know that this is like a new layer to the internet that can't be kind of put back in the box. And I just don't see, and I don't know exactly what the timeline is, but I don't see a world in which every single piece of content on the internet is owned and ownable, and the whole the internet gets re-architected around this. And then at the cultural level, the physical world will just pale in comparison to the amount of art and content and curation that happens on the internet level. And so there's just two huge seismic forces happening, and they're not going to be stopped. And so it's going to be a really fun decade ahead of watching this unfold.
Yeah, just a couple quick ones. One, it seems like we're definitely headed for a bubble that's going to be like a lot of the other bubbles that have like accompanied new technology infrastructure. But I think maybe like more importantly and more significant in like a human sense, we're like seeing the emergence of like a new social construct about like owning abstract things. And I think kind of like, even though we're thinking about it as owning a piece of art, like this idea that just like you can own a piece of land, which is kind of like a collective delusion we all buy into because it makes society work better. The idea that you can own a digital thing is going to have like similar ramifications for like how human society operates. And it might even go deeper than like anything that we're thinking about today or in a year. But
I mean, that's probably, that sentence right there is probably one of the best notes to end on. I think it's very clear. I mean, like that comment to, what K1 was talking about, where we don't want to put this back in the box, to Kevin's comment about, where the value might be generated, to everything Justin and Mike said. I mean, I think it's probably clear to everyone here, like, we just at the beginning, and you can almost just feel the electricity and excitement from this room, where we all kind of just figure this out. And we just, on like day zero, to as Bezos would say. Okay, I know we're way over time, but I want to kind of wrap this. First of all, this is such an extraordinary show. It's probably one of the best ones we've ever done. And I want to just thank so many people. I want to thank everybody who listened in and sent us questions and comments. We tried to get to a few, but we're just going to get to so many. We can get to so many. And rest assured, we're going to do many more of these. I think that was clear tonight. NFTs are only going to explode. I think, Justin kind of hinted at like what could be coming on just the supply side, on the artist side. There's going to be so much more, I'm sure, on like pretty much every side. So we're going to do so much more. So send us thoughts, comments. We would love to have, like the guests we had today, we'd love to have them back and do it in various forms. And I want to also, on the panel, just thank all of the guests. Our usual crew, our co-host Aarthi, our usual crew of like Marc, Avichal, Chris Dixon for providing us all the crypto insights, Steven Sinofsky as usual, and then all of our guests, Baron for jumping in. It just, but I have to say, what can get more 2021 than Baron and Marc just talking about art? That was just a really, really cool moment right there. And to everybody else, thanks Baron, and like from Dylan to Kevin, who's kind of the OG of the space, to Scott, to K1, to Mike, and to Justin. And just like, thank you so much for just amazing insight, which has been overwhelmed by all the tweets, all the comments. And I just want to say thank you for not just being on the show. Thank you for everything you've done and just kind of pushing the boundaries. And, I think it's safe to say, like, we're going to just see some amazing things from everybody here. And I'm super excited. Okay. So we have a tradition on this show where we end each episode with some piece of music which is tied to one of the speakers or the content we have listened to. And this one is special because we actually have a legit DJ / producer in the room. So, Justin, what are we going to listen to now, and then I'll play it.
Thank you for having me. We're going to be listening to the rarest NFT from my album drop this past weekend. It's a song called Touch. Let's do it.
All right, Steven, take us away. Steven? Dramatic pause.
Hey, Steven, are you here?